Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Simple Truth with the Baldman. I'm your host, Pastor Jared, and back when I started this thing, back in the very first video, I promised you guys that I would tell you my story, that I'd walk you through, who I am and give you some insight into me, and so that's what I'm going to do today. The reason that there's a few reasons that I want to do this. One, I kind of figure you guys might want to know who it is that is talking to you. Who's this guy that keeps telling me, this is the truth about that and that, whatever. You don't know anything about me, and even some of my friends don't really know a whole lot about my past. So it's only fair to kind of let you know who I am, where I come from. Also, I'm hoping that you'll see that I'm not claiming to be perfect. I'm not claiming that I've never, screwed up or whatever. I am just as human as you, and maybe even a worse one than you are. So it's not that I'm out here talking about things I don't have experience with, and it's not that I'm talking about things I don't know about, because I've been through it. I've walked through life without God. I may not have been in the same situations as you, but I have been through situations. I can relate to most people, and so that's the point. I want to let you know who I was, where I came from, what my experience has been, and where I am now, so that those of you who have not made a decision to pursue a relationship with God, maybe you'll see a little more reason to do so. Those of you who have accepted Jesus as your Savior, maybe you can relate to what I have gone through, and maybe it'll rekindle something. A lot of us tend to get cold over time, and it just becomes kind of normal life, and we're just not holding as tightly. We're not as on fire for God as we once were. But yeah, like I said, this is just an opportunity for me to kind of let you in a little behind the scenes, to see who I am, and to hopefully understand why this is important to me, and hopefully why it's important to you. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. I come from a family that on both my mother and my father's side, at least I'm at least the third generation church-going Christian individual. On my father's side, his parents were church going. They took them to church, him and his siblings to church pretty much every time the doors were open. They grew up understanding. My dad, actually, when I was young, it wasn't before I was born, but when I was young, my dad actually was a pastor for a short time, and well, I don't really know all the story about that, and I'm not going to try to tell his story. I'm here to tell mine. And then my mom's side, my grandmother, I know, was an early member of the Midland Church of God. Not quite a charter member. She wasn't there the day the doors opened, but she wasn't very far from it. And when she grew up and had kids of her own, she also took her kids to church, and then they grew up taking their kids to church. So my mom and dad both had grown up with a habit, and habit's such a not a good word, but whatever. That was the program. Church doors were open, you go, and so was the program for me as well. Whenever church was happening, we were there. And even after my parents split, and yes, unfortunately they did, and I was quite young when they did. But even after they split up, my mom still made it a normal part of our week. And at that time, we had Sunday school on Sunday morning, then we had Sunday service after Sunday school. We had Sunday evening service. We had Wednesday night service. If there was a revival going on, if there was a guest speaker in town, we were going all week. If there was some kind of a Friday night event going on, we were going to be at the church on Friday night. If there was any kind of a Saturday night dinner or fall festival or anything that opened the church doors, we were going to be there. Every summer I went to a church camp, and we had vacation Bible school and all that. So for at least 2 weeks out of the summer, I was at church every day. So it was just an accepted thing. It was just known. If the doors were open, we were going to be there. If there was work to be done, we were going to help with it. If whatever was needed. I remember my mom and my bonus dad, which is the term we use for stepdad in our family. My mom and my bonus dad, I can remember both of them being involved in church volleyball leagues and basketball leagues and stuff like that, and we went to those all the time. And it wasn't always just about sitting in church and being taught the word. It was community. It was about being together with other believers and building those friendships and being that community. But I, as a kid, just never really invested in it. I never understood why people wanted to be with these people, and I always thought they were boring, because most of the people in the church, when I was a kid, most people in the church were my parents and my grandparents' age. So, it wasn't, I didn't have any reason to want to hang around with these people. They were their friends. And because most everything I received, now I'm not saying this is all that was taught, but most everything that I received when I was a kid in Sunday school and in church and stuff like that was, as a Christian, we don't do this and we don't do that and we don't do this and we don't do that. And it was all the regulations, the you can'ts. It was all the don't do's, and that's all I really ever heard. And being a kid and growing up and having this, having the perspective of the world, everything that they were telling me I couldn't do were all the things that TV and friends at school and media in general, just all the things that every other aspect of life was telling me were necessary and important experiences. Everything that the church was telling me, this is not part of a healthy Christian life, all of that stuff were the things that the world was telling me, these are defining moments. These are things that you've got to get involved in and experience and, whatever. It was, just as an example, one of our favorite shows as a kid was Cheers. Cheers has a character named Sam Malone. Sam Malone goes out and hooks up with thousands of women, and he's always talking about his latest encounter, and the guys at the bar are always living vicariously through him, and Sam was kind of the hero of the show because of his ability with women. And then the church is telling us that's not healthy. That's not how God intended it. That's not how you're supposed to live. And so it's just, everything was very conflicting, and I wasn't hearing what I understand now. All I heard was, rules and fun. And I wanted the fun, not the rules. Sorry, there's a gnat that keeps getting in my coffee, and he's driving me nuts, and I can't catch him, and I still didn't get him. I'm going to try to ignore him, but sorry. Anyway, so that's all I understood as a kid, is everything fun we're told we can't do. And I didn't really, and now looking back at it, I can see moments where being around the people at church, they were having fun, they were laughing, they were, telling jokes, enjoying life. I see that now. But at the time, I didn't. At the time, all I saw was, you guys want to suck all the fun out of life and not let me live a full, complete life. Now, I may not have articulated it that way as a kid, but that's what I was seeing, is you guys want to inhibit me from having a full life, and I'm not ready for that. So I was always like, yeah, I believe this, but later. I've got other stuff I need to get done first. And I grew up that way. All the way through, I got into high school, and just after high school, and I was hanging out with just the wrong crowd. And I mean, not terrible people, just people who did not foster the relationship goals that I should have been looking for. I was hanging out with people who were smoking pot every time we got together, and going and hooking up and doing all the things that I grew up being told I shouldn't be doing. And so, of course, those were the people that I was seeking out because I was rebellious. And so I got tied in with the wrong crowd, which just caused even more conflict, even deeper rebellion on my part, and more conflict, looking to have the things that I thought I was being denied in the life my parents were trying to teach me, and my parents, grandparents, and all that. And then as an adult, well, at least in the eyes of the law, because I had not really matured that much. But as an adult, I carried that rebellion on. So I move away from my mom's house, and I move up to Colorado, and now I don't have any of my family around me that's the church type. And so I just throw all that out the window, and I'm just going to live life, and I'm going to get all those things that I knew that I needed that they were trying to deny me. And so I went into party mode, and I did everything I could to experience all these different things. I quit going to church altogether, and I quit even trying to pretend like I was that guy, because as growing up in the household that I grew up in, I could pretend pretty well. I could play the part pretty well, and I needed to, because there were certain things that I couldn't do at home that I did when I was at school or out with my friends. There were certain words and stuff that I couldn't say when I was around my parents that I did say when I was around my friends. And so I got really good at compartmentalizing and separating those two lives and not letting them overlap. But then once I moved out and was out on my own, I didn't have to do that anymore. At least not much. Sometimes I'd call and talk to my parents and stuff, and I'd be, I'd have phone conversations. I'd be careful then. Sometimes I'd come back to visit, and I'd be careful when I was around them then. But for the most part, I just threw all that stuff that they taught me growing up out the window and decided I was going to live how I wanted to. And it didn't work out so well. I never really was. I never was the Sam Malone. I tried real hard, but I never was as successful at it as I always thought I wanted to be. But I'm spending time out there, and I'm living this life that's totally apart from God, and not even thinking about a relationship with Him or anything like that anymore. I meet a girl, we wind up getting married, and we both really kind of had this rebellious spirit going on within us, and we were both put off of the religious idea, and we had two very different backgrounds from that anyway. But then we both had this rebellious spirit about us, and we wind up getting married and trying to make that work, and it was just never good. It It really never was. Now we have two wonderful boys from it, and we love them to death. And I don't regret them at all. But as far as her and my relationship, it just really never was good. It was acceptable at times, but it was really, really bad at times. But it was never what a marriage should be. Because just speaking for myself, I was never prepared for what marriage really was. I had this fairy tale idea about marriage that you get from romantic comedies and fairy tale stories, this happily ever after idea that we're sold as kids, and that's just not true. It's not real. It doesn't. The story doesn't just go on autopilot from the wedding day on. It's life. You got to deal with life. You got to deal with stuff, and there's going to be days that you just can't stand to look at your spouse, and you guys still have to live life together. And you have to understand that love is a choice before you can carry it out and treat it that way and be successful. And we just weren't prepared for that. We didn't have an understanding of that. And so when it went bad, it went really bad. And, for about 5.5 years, we went really bad. And then we would kind of work our way back into some acceptable kind of relationship. And then we'd eventually go really bad again. And it was not a good situation for any of us. But the biggest problem was neither of us were really centered where we needed to be, and that is in a moral, a morally sound belief system. Honestly, God has to be the center of your marriage, or it's going to be very hard, if not impossible, to have a good marriage. But I'm kind of chasing rabbits. I tend to do that. Anyway, so for 5.5 years we tried, and we just never really were successful. And then finally it fell apart. And we both had a hand in it. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not trying to, play myself to be perfect. I could have been far better than I was in that relationship as well. And so then I wind up back at my mom's house. And I start playing with the idea of being Christian again, but I'm still not really committed to it because I still don't really understand it. And so I go back to the dual lifestyle. I am, when I'm at home and when church is open, I'm there and I am this guy and I'm playing the part and doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And when I am at work and when I am out at play, I am this guy and I'm doing something completely different. I'm the guy that spent every weekend at the bar, Friday night, Saturday night, and I wasn't there for the drinking. I drank. I'd have a few, but I was out at the bar for the specific purpose of trying to find somebody to hook up with. I got into this mindset that I needed to, I'm just going to be blunt. I got this mindset that I needed to sleep with every woman I could, as often as I could, and not get tied down. And that was what was going to make me happy. Was I think one of the slang terms for it now is body count. Now that's not the term I used for it, but that was the idea. Is I had to build my body count, and it didn't really matter to me if I knew anything about them or who they were. Or, it just didn't. I was just, physical was what I thought was going to make me happy. And the more I could succeed in that, the better I was going to be at succeeding the next time. And it was just this whole spiraling lie. I didn't realize that. My idea was, this is what's going to make me happy. This, the next girl that I hook up with, that's going to be my breakthrough, or the next one is going to be my breakthrough. And it was always this this idea of happiness that was just outside my reach. And I had to chase that. And, I had people telling me constantly, because I wasn't as good at hiding it as I thought I was. And so I did have family that knew what was going on, and they would try and talk to me about it. But I had people that would tell me that, that's not who you need to be. That's not the life you need to live, and you need to stop all that and go this way and whatever. And what they didn't understand, or at least didn't seem to understand, and what frustrated me about it so much was I knew that's who I was. That is absolutely and completely what my person was made up of. I needed that. That was exactly what I had to have. I wasn't the kind of guy that was going to ever be fulfilled by a relationship with one person. I was not the kind of guy who was ever going to be fulfilled by a church setting kind of lifestyle or anything like that. That just wasn't who I was. I was the guy I was out being when I was going out to the bar and stuff. And they just didn't seem to understand that. And they wanted me to change who I was, and they didn't understand that those were my stripes. As a tiger, those were my stripes, and a tiger can't change his stripes. And so they're telling me to change who I am, and I'm just not capable of doing it. And it frustrated me. And so it just, again, this rebellion and this, dual life, it just became even harder and harder to manage and more frustrating. I became angry. So I'd, go to church because that was the expectation. And so I'd be there, but the whole time I'm there, I'm just angry, and I'm not in a good place because I'm angry because I'm being told you can't be who you're supposed to be. And who I'm supposed to be was this persona that I had built. And so finally, one day I got into a situation. So one day I met this girl, and I started dating her. Now, I was still going to the bar, and I wasn't treating her right. But I started dating this girl, and I thought, this girl is really pretty awesome. I really dig her. We get along well. We jive pretty good. And so I decided I wanted to be the best man that I could be for the relationship that I was building, so that it had the best chance possible, so that she and I had a better chance than me and my ex-wife. And so I finally got to a point that I went and talked to God, and I put everything out there. See, up to this point, every time I had ever talked to God about, Jesus come be part of my life, or, save me and whatever, it was always a negotiation. It was always, I'll serve you, but you need to give me this. Or you can have all of my life except for these couple of things, and I'm going to keep them because they're things that I need and whatever. It was always something like that. It was always a partial submission. Like, you can have most of it, but I'm going to keep some of it and do what I want with it. And that's not how God works. And I couldn't understand why he wouldn't work that way, and why he had to be so, arrogant about I want it all or nothing. But finally, I got to the point where I said, you know what, forget it, all of it. I'm not doing any good with it, and I'm not the guy I want to be, so you can have all of it. And I just told him, I said, anything in my life that you're not happy with, get rid of it, fix it, replace it with what you want. But, I'm done being the guy that I have been. And the best man that I saw that I could be The reason I got to this point, like I said, for that relationship, I wanted to be the best man that I could be. Well, the best men that I knew were all Christian men in the church. And so that's why I got to that point. And so I told him, I said, everything, all that I am, I'm not anybody important. I'm not anybody good. But you take it all and turn it into what you want it. Make me who you want me to be. And of course, one of the very first things that disappeared from my life was that girl. And at any other time in my life, if that had happened, I'd have slammed the door shut on God, said, fine, if that's how you want to be about it, if you really want to not do what I want you to do and do what you want to do, and whatever. But this time, I don't know. I guess I had actually crossed some line. I had made it past some threshold or something, because even though the girl went away, and it was not what I wanted, but even though she went away, I still was open to this new relationship with God that I had found. And I still continue to press in and to get closer and to try to learn more about him and to study. And I found that I needed all of a sudden to read the Bible and to see what was in there, because that had always been such a chore before that. But now all of a sudden I needed to know what was in there. I needed to know what was real, or what was the story of God. And so I was digging into Scripture. I realized that it took me about 3 weeks for this to happen, but I realized that every time it was time to go to the bar, I just didn't feel like going. And I'd be at the door ready to go, but then I'd be like, you know what? Not tonight, maybe tomorrow night. Not this weekend, maybe next weekend. And the third week that I didn't go to the bar, now understand, I might have missed going to the bar on a Friday or a Saturday, but I never missed a Friday and a Saturday. If I was in town, I was at the bar at least one night on the weekend trying to make something happen. And then all of a sudden, on the third weekend, I had not been at all for 2 weeks. And on the third weekend, on Saturday, I'm thinking about going to the bar, and I'm like, you know what? I just don't feel like it right now. And it hit me all of a sudden. I'm like, dude, I don't not feel like going to the bar right now. I just don't feel like going anymore. And then I realized that these last 3 weekends that I haven't gone to the bar, what I have done those nights, those hours, because I'd go to the bar like 8, 9 o'clock at night, stay there till 2 o'clock in the morning until it closed. And with all those hours that I could have been at the bar, that I would normally have been at the bar, what I was doing that whole time was reading the Bible, doing devotionals, learning things, digging in and learning about God. So the time that I had devoted to me, to doing all these things that were so me, now just kind of automatically became about learning this new relationship that I had gotten into. And I realized also, once I realized that I didn't want to be at the bar anymore, then it kind of hit me, why? Why don't I want to be? This is who I was. And I realized the drinking, that was a prison that I was putting myself in. Financially, mostly, because I was spending so much money at the bar on drinks and stuff to try and make other things happen. But I was losing so much money at the bar drinking. I was smoking like 2 packs of cigarettes a night at the bar. And the girls, the chase that I was so desperate for, was also a prison that I had built for myself. The one thing that I thought was eventually going to free me, and that was going to satisfy me, and that was going to, one more time, and I'm going to get there. I'm going to have that breakthrough. And that was actually the prison that I had built for myself and was holding me down. And what I realized, and I still suffer from this, is every rejection, every missed opportunity to hook up, not only did it prolong that, or not only did it not get me that breakthrough that I wanted, but it caused damage to me, because it made it harder and harder for me to talk to somebody the next time. And I finally got to the point that I just couldn't meet new people. It didn't matter if it was women or men or whatever. I was just totally uncomfortable around new people, and I couldn't function socially. Now, if I got into a group of friends, people that I knew, people I was comfortable with, then, fine. I could handle that, no problem. But walking into a group of new people and meeting them, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And the biggest reason I couldn't do it is because I always assumed, and this is part of the battle that I fight now, especially if it is a female. I have this assumption in my head that anything that I say to a female is going to be taken as flirtation, is going to be taken as me hitting on them. And so no matter what I do, what I say, they're going to assume there's an ulterior motive because that's who I used to be. Now, they don't know that that's who I used to be, but that's what I always assume is going to happen is they're going to see who I used to be, and they're going to assume that I'm trying to get something from them rather than just building a friendship or just complimenting. I can't even tell somebody, hey, that's a nice shirt, or I like your shoes, or you look pretty today, or anything like that, because I have this built-in fear that I've created for myself that as soon as I say that, they're going to think this, and it's going to cause a problem. I had built this prison. I had destroyed myself to this point, and that was who I was supposed to be. And it wasn't until I finally got to that point with God that I realized that I had done all this damage to myself. And when I realized that, I felt so free. Now, I still struggle with the scars from that, but I still feel free because now I live a different life. I am a different person. I found out that all those don't do's that I was taught as a kid, it's not restrictions. It is that I have been changed on this molecular level, that who I was no longer exists, and now what I want is to not do those things I was taught that we shouldn't do. Not because somebody told me, but just because that's who I am now. I use the example sometimes. When I became a Christian, I never stopped doing anything that I want to do. I never gave up. That's the problem that so many people have is like I did when I was a kid. I don't want to sacrifice all these things so that I can live a Christian life. Well, I never sacrificed what I wanted to do. I never stopped doing anything that I wanted to do when I became a Christian. But what happened is the things that I want to do changed. No longer did I want to run around and try to chase down all the girls, but instead I wanted to spend time finding out who God is and learning more about Him. I wanted to get into a real learn about you relationship with somebody and actually, find out who He was, and in turn find out who I was meant to be. I didn't sacrifice the foul language I used to use. I just found that it didn't really taste right in my mouth anymore. It didn't feel right when I used it anymore, and I didn't want to be that. I've always had a pretty good vocabulary, and now I use it more. And lately I have problems finding words and stuff, and I don't know what all that's about, but I found I can articulate myself far better without that than I can with it. And that's who I want to be now. So the big problem that most people have, and what I came to realize, is it's not that I have to give all of this up to be a Christian. It is that becoming a Christian makes all of this not important anymore. I don't want this stuff anymore. The stuff that I used to carry around, I don't want it anymore. It's a burden. It's baggage that I thought was making me stronger, but really all it was doing was hurting me and causing me damage. I finally understand what the verse in 2 Corinthians 5:17 means. And it says, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new." And that's exactly what it is. It's not a lifestyle of sacrificing to please God, because nothing we can do is ever going to reconnect us with God. Our sin separates us, and that's what Jesus does. We can't do that. It's not this life of trying to please God with our actions. It is that once you reach that transformation point with Jesus, then you realize that all this stuff that I was doing was just not, it's not who I want to be. You just become different. You are changed. And giving this stuff up is not a sacrifice anymore. It becomes very freeing, very liberating. I felt like a weight had been released from me. I felt lighter. I don't have to do that junk anymore. And I realized there is acceptance and there is love and there is, a family, not only in Christ, but in this church that I've been going to my whole life that I never felt accepted in. And it was because I was keeping myself separate from them. And once I reached that point, then I saw the acceptance that was always there. I saw the love that was always there. But I had been blocking it. And so now all of a sudden I had this family and people I could talk to and people I could go to and all that. And so that's my story. Now, thankfully I have, God sent me a wonderful woman that I am married to who is amazing and far better than I could have ever found on my own. Life is not perfect. It's not awesome, and we don't have everything that we want, and we still struggle and we still fight, but it is infinitely better than it ever was before. And that's my story. That can be your story. That is the story. It's not that God's going to make your life free of problems, because we're still human. We still live in this world. We still, have to deal with this fallen world. But it's just that you don't have to be ruled by the things of this world. You don't have to be controlled by, we got bills that we can't pay and, work stinks and all this. You don't have to be ruled by that anymore. It's still going to be part of life, but there's just something better that becomes part of you and that you become part of yourself. So that's my story. After I finally submitted and all that, I realized that God had called me years and years earlier into a specific direction and into preaching and pastoring and teaching. And so I followed that path, and that's where I'm at now, and we're working toward that, and this is where I am, and I won't go back. I don't have any desire to go back to that. And I didn't really plan how I was going to end this, so I'm just going to leave it here. I thought I knew what happiness was. I thought I knew what my life needed to be until I really, truly met Jesus at the foot of the cross. And then I found out I was totally wrong. And life is so much better than I ever could have built it on my own. And the same is available to you as well. If you'd like to learn more, if you'd like to hear more about that, or if you've got suggestions for show topics, whatever, send them to us. We want to hear them. Sorry I kept you so long. This one's a bit longer than most, but that's the story and that's the truth of it. If you don't like where you're at, if you don't like who you are, or if whatever the case is, if you think there might be more to life, give God a chance. Talk to Jesus, give him everything, and it's not a scary thing. It's really not. He's not going to hurt you. He's just going to make you better. And if you doubt that, or if you question that, try him. I mean, worst case scenario, you can always take it back. He's not going to make me stay here. If I want to go back, I can go back, but I'm not. but you can't convince me that I want that I need to. And the Bible tells us in several places, test him. Gideon tested him. So, what's the worst that can happen? You either get what I'm talking about or nothing happens. That's a no-lose situation right there. Anyway, reach out to us. You've got our email address, and we will be looking forward to hearing from you. Love you guys. I'm praying for you, and we'll see you next time.